Hey there, I'm Linda. If you'd see me walking down Main Street, you might think, now there's a lady who's got her life together. And yeah, at 55, with my own business and a home that could grace the cover of Garden Beautiful, it sure looks that way. But let me tell you, it wasn't always sunshine and roses. This whole saga kicked off about 25 years back. I was 30, fresh off the loss of my folks. They were good people, loved me to bits, being their only kid and all. They left me the family farm and our old house. A sweet deal for some, but for me, it was a mix of a blessing and a curse. One day, I was out in the fields, checking on the crops, when Mike, my neighbor, hopped over the fence. Mike was as rugged as they come, with hands that told tales of hard work and a smile that could light up the darkest days. "Hey, Linda. You plan on running this place all by yourself?" he called out, wiping the sweat off his brow with the back of his hand. I shrugged, trying to look more confident than I felt. "Guess I have to, don't I? Can't let this all go to waste." Mike leaned on the fence, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Your folks did a hell of a job with this land. You need a hand, you know where to find me." "Thanks, Mike. I might just take you up on that," I replied, offering him a smile. That was the thing about our little community, we had each other's backs. But deep down, I knew if I was going to keep this farm afloat, I needed more than casual help. I needed a partner, in every sense of the word. Enter Michael, or as I like to call him, my saving grace. He was a city boy, looking for a slice of country life, and boy, did we hit it off. One minute we were talking crop rotations, and the next, we were planning our life together. One evening, after a long day's work, we sat on the porch, our hands intertwined, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "Linda, this place, it's got potential. With a bit of elbow grease, we could really make something of it," Michael mused, his voice full of hope. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "I know. It's just daunting, you know? It's not just a farm, it's my legacy." He turned to me, his gaze serious. "And it's our future. I'm in this with you, every step of the way." That's how our journey began. Together, we poured our hearts and souls into the farm. It wasn't easy, far from it. Life on the farm with Michael was like riding a roller coaster without any brakes, thrilling, terrifying, and utterly unpredictable. Then David came along, and suddenly, the stakes were higher than ever. He was our little miracle, the kind of baby that could make the hardest farmer melt into a puddle of goo with just one toothless grin. Michael was over the moon, but he was also practical to a fault. One night, a few weeks after David's arrival, we were sitting in the dim light of our living room, the baby finally asleep after what felt like an eternity of fussing. "Linda, you're spoiling the boy," Michael began, his voice low, trying not to wake David. "He needs to learn the value of hard work, just like we did." I'd brush off his comments, too caught up in the love I had for our son. "He's just a child, Michael. There's plenty of time for all that." But Michael was right. In my desire to give David everything, I might have given him too much of the wrong thing. It was a lesson I'd learned the hard way, but back then, I was too blinded by love to see it. Those early days turned into months, and months into years. David grew like a weed, and with every inch, he seemed to gain a new spark of curiosity about the farm. Michael was in his element, teaching David how to care for the animals and the crops. I watched them, my heart full, even as a small part of me worried we were setting him up for a life of hard labor. "Mom, look!" David would shout, running towards me with a new discovery, a frog or a particularly shiny rock. His eyes were always so full of wonder, it was contagious. "I see, honey. That's amazing." I'd respond, matching his excitement, even when I was dead on my feet from the day's work. But it wasn't all sunshine and play. The farm demanded a lot from all of us, and there were days when the tension ran high. Michael and I would sometimes clash over the smallest things, the stress of the harvest or a sick animal, turning into a much bigger argument. David's laughter became the soundtrack of our lives, a constant reminder of what we were working so hard for. And even on the toughest days, when the crops were failing or the bills were piling up, one look at our son's smiling face was all it took to remind us why it was all worth it. Then, tragedy struck. Michael fell ill, and despite a fierce battle, we lost him. It gutted me. I tried to keep things together, but grief has a way of eating at you, and I found comfort in food more than I should have. I was a shadow of my former self, lost in sorrow and stress eating my way through the days. When David came back home, fresh out of college, he didn't come alone. He brought his wife, Liz, who carried herself with an air that said she'd rather be anywhere but here. The moment they stepped through the door, I could feel the judgment hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. David didn't waste any time. "Mom, what's happened to you? This isn't okay. You've let yourself go." His words stung, a harsh reminder of how far I'd fallen. I wanted to lash out, to tell him he had no idea what I'd been through, but the look of disappointment in his eyes silenced me. Liz's gaze was even worse, full of disdain as she scanned the room, her nose wrinkled as if she'd smelled something foul. "We're actually going to live here," she whispered to David, loud enough for me to hear. Despite everything, they agreed to stay. "But things are going to change around here," David declared, a tone in his voice that brooked no argument. In my heartache and loneliness, I clung to the hope that having my son home would help heal the gaping wound left by Michael's passing. So, when David suggested he take over the legal management of the farm, I didn't hesitate. "If you think that's best," I murmured, signing over the rights with a shaky hand, unaware of the consequences this decision would bring. Life took on a new kind of normal, one where I felt more like an outsider than the matriarch of the home I'd built with Michael. David and Liz made changes, big and small, and with each new decision, I felt my connection to the farm slipping away. The final blow came one quiet evening, as I overheard David and Liz talking in the living room. "We need to make some real changes around here, Liz. It's time to think about our future, not just cling to the past," David said, his voice firm. Liz's reply was cold, calculated. "Exactly. Your mother had her time. Now, it's our turn. We need to think about what's best for us." The days rolled into one another, each feeling heavier than the last. My home, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, had turned into a battleground. David and Liz's disdain was a constant shadow, chilling the very air I breathed. One afternoon, I was tending to the garden, my hands deep in the earth, trying to find some solace in the familiar feel of soil, when David stormed out. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight with frustration. I straightened up, wiping the dirt on my jeans, bracing myself. "What's it now, David?" "It's about the farm, and your habits. Liz and I have been talking. We think it's time for some changes," he said, avoiding my gaze. I felt a flash of anger. "My habits? You mean the way I run the farm? The farm that's been in our family for generations?" David shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, that. And, well, Liz thinks, we think you could take better care of yourself. For your health." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, this is about my weight now? Is that it?" "It's not just that, Mom. It's everything. You've let yourself go. And the farm, it's not being managed right. We're losing money," David shot back, his patience thinning. The accusation stung. I had poured my heart and soul into this land, even more so after losing Michael. To hear my own son dismiss it all so casually was a knife to my heart. "And what do you plan to do about it, David? Take over completely? Push me out?" My voice was sharp, laced with hurt and anger. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Mom. But something's gotta give. We can't go on like this." As he walked away, I felt a profound sense of isolation. My son, my flesh and blood, was turning against me, blinded by his wife's contempt and his own ambition. A few days later, Liz cornered me in the kitchen. Her usual disdain was replaced with a cold, calculated look. "You know, you could try a little harder, Linda. Make yourself useful. Maybe get a job, help out more around the house," she said, her words like ice. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. I've done nothing but work my entire life, Liz. For this family, for this farm. And I don't need you to tell me about being useful. Liz laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. Useful? Please. You're dead weight around here. David and I are the future of this farm. You're just in the way. Her words ignited something within me, a fiery mix of rage and determination. This farm is my life, Liz. I won't be pushed aside, not by you or anyone else. She smirked, clearly amused by my defiance. We'll see about that, Linda. We'll see. As she sauntered out of the kitchen, I was left with a swirling mix of emotions. Fear, anger, but above all, a steely resolve. David and Liz might think they could break me, push me out of my own home, but I was made of sterner stuff. I realized then that this was more than just a fight for the farm. It was a fight for my dignity, for my place in the world. I wasn't going to let them win. Not without a fight. The betrayal cut deep, but it also woke a sleeping giant within me. My love for David was unwavering, but I knew that love could be tough, it could demand standing up for oneself. I had lost my way, drowned in grief and self-pity, but no more. Things at home had gone from bad to unbearable. Liz, my daughter-in-law, wouldn't lift a finger to help around the house. Cooking, cleaning, it all fell on me. But it wasn't just the extra chores that wore me down, it was her words, sharp as thorns, always ready to cut. You know, you smell like the barn, right? And your clothes, it's like you roll in manure for fun, Liz sneered one day as I was preparing dinner, her nose wrinkled in disgust. I tried to brush it off, keep the peace for David's sake. Well, it's a farm. It comes with the territory. She laughed, a harsh, grating sound that made my skin crawl. Maybe get a manicure sometime, huh? Try not to look so hillbilly. I felt a lump in my throat, the loneliness and unhappiness pressing down on me. This wasn't the family life I'd imagined. Things escalated when I mentioned a dentist appointment I had coming up. David, my own son, blew up. You're just another bill, you know that? Everything about you is just more money down the drain. His words stung, a betrayal that cut deeper than any of Liz's jabs. My home, my sanctuary, had become a prison. I remembered Michael's warnings about spoiling David, how I brushed them off. Now, those memories haunted me, a bitter reminder of my mistakes. Then, the final blow came. David, with that cold, determined look in his eyes, announced, "We're selling the farm. Moving to the city. It's all set, buyers lined up and everything." Panic gripped me. And what about me? What happens to me? Liz's laugh, cruel and mocking, was the only response. Oh, you think you're coming with us? Dream on. You can stay here. Maybe someone will take pity on you. Their words echoed in the empty house, a stark reminder of how alone I was. My family, my home, my whole life, it was all slipping away. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let them erase me, not without a fight. My voice, steady despite the turmoil inside, challenged them. You think you can just throw me out, just like that? This is my home too, and I won't go down without a fight. David's face hardened. You don't have a say in this anymore. We've made our decision. I stood my ground, my resolve hardening. We'll see about that. I'm not as helpless as you think. As they walked away, leaving me in the silence of my betrayal, I knew this was more than just a fight for a piece of land. It was a fight for my dignity, my legacy, and my rights. I might have been down, but I wasn't out. Not by a long shot. After the shock wore off, anger and determination took its place. I wasn't about to let my son and his wife bulldoze over me. I knew I needed help, someone who knew the ins and outs of the law. That's when I thought of Tom, a lawyer friend of Michael's. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I picked up the phone, my hands shaking slightly. Tom, it's Linda. I need your help. Tom's voice was a bomb, calm and steady. Linda, it's been ages. What's going on? I poured out the story, the pain and betrayal, coloring every word. Tom listened quietly, only interrupting to ask for clarifications. When I finished, there was a heavy silence. Linda, I'm sorry you're going through this. But I think you've got a strong case. Let's meet tomorrow, go over everything. We'll find a way to fight this. Hanging up, I felt the first glimmer of hope in what felt like forever. The meeting with Tom was a revelation. He dug through the deeds, the wills, and all the legal documents my husband had left behind. Michael was a smart man, Tom said, pointing to a clause in the documents. He made sure you'd always have a say in what happens to the farm. Your son can't sell it without your consent. Armed with this knowledge, I confronted David and Liz. They were in the living room, going over plans, their dreams of the city life spread out on the coffee table. I spoke to a lawyer, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in days. David looked up, annoyance flashing in his eyes. And what? You're going to sue your own son? If I have to, I shot back, the documents clutched in my hand like a shield. Did you know your father made sure I'd always have a say in the farm? You can't sell it without my consent. Liz laughed, but there was a hint of nervousness in it now. She's bluffing. But I laid the documents on the table. I'm not bluffing. This is the truth. You want to fight this? Go ahead. But you're not going to win. The change in them was immediate. The confidence, the smugness, it all evaporated, replaced by uncertainty and fear. The revelation hit David like a physical blow. His anger turned to fury, a venomous look directed at me. So, this is how it is? You'd rather see us ruined than help your own son? It's not about ruining anyone. It's about protecting what's mine. What your father and I worked for, I replied, my resolve firm. David's fury boiled over. All you care about is this farm. Not me, not us. You know what? We don't need you. We don't need any of this. Liz joined in, her words laced with venom. Yeah, we thought we could use the money, but if this is how it's going to be, forget it. We're better off without you. Their insults stung, a bitter pill to swallow. But as they stormed out, leaving me standing alone but resolute, a weight lifted off my shoulders. The realization hit hard, David's love had been conditional, tied to what he could gain from me. The house was silent after they left, a stark contrast to the chaos of the confrontation. But in that silence, I found strength. I had stood up for myself, for Michael's legacy, and though the future was uncertain, I felt a sense of peace. With David and Liz gone, the silence of the farm wasn't as oppressive as I feared, it felt like a clean slate. The first few weeks were tough, not gonna lie. Waking up to the vast, empty house felt eerie, but also sparked something in me I hadn't felt in years, freedom. I started with the garden, Michael's favorite spot. It was overgrown, a wild tangle of weeds and memories. As I dug into the earth, clearing away the neglect, I felt closer to him than I had in a long time. Tom dropped by one afternoon, a surprise visit. He found me in the midst of my gardening, hands dirty, hair a mess. Making progress, I see, he said, a warm smile on his face. I stood up, brushing the dirt off my jeans. Trying to. It's good to see you, Tom. Wasn't expecting company. He helped me up, his hand steady. I figured you might need some cheering up. Plus, I wanted to see how you're holding up. We walked around the farm, Tom listening as I shared my plans, my hopes for the future. It was easy talking to him, easier than I expected. He had this way of making me feel heard, understood. Linda, you're doing an amazing job. Michael would be proud, Tom said, his gaze meeting mine. Something fluttered in my chest at those words, at the look in his eyes. Thanks, Tom. It means a lot, coming from you. As the days turned into weeks, Tom became a regular fixture around the farm. His visits weren't just about checking in, he started lending a hand, fixing up the barn, helping with the crops. We fell into an easy rhythm, working side by side, sharing meals, and more laughs than I'd had in years. One evening, as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Tom turned to me, his expression serious. "Linda, I've been meaning to tell you something." I felt my heartbeat quicken, a mix of anticipation and nerves. "What's that?" I've grown quite fond of you. More than just a friend. I know it's been a tough year for you, but I was hoping, maybe, you'd feel the same," he said, his voice steady but his eyes searching mine for a reaction. I was speechless, a whirlwind of emotions tumbling inside me. The thought of opening my heart again, after everything, scared me. But looking at Tom, feeling the warmth of his hand in mine, I realized I didn't want to face the days ahead without him. "Tom, I started, my voice barely a whisper. "I think I feel the same." His smile then, it was like a new beginning, a promise of better days to come. We leaned in, the kiss soft and tentative at first, but it quickly deepened, filled with all the unsaid words, the shared sorrows, and the budding hope for the future. Life on the farm changed after that. It wasn't just about rebuilding anymore, it was about creating something new, something ours. Tom moved in, and together, we started planning. Not just for the farm, but for us. Rebuilding the farm, finding love again with Tom, it wasn't something I expected. Life had a funny way of surprising you, of turning the tides when you least expected it. And as I looked around at the land Michael and I had loved, now being loved anew, I knew I was right where I was supposed to be. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm with Tom, whose grown children treated me with nothing but kindness and respect. It was a stark contrast to the turbulent relationship I had with my own son, David, and his wife, Liz. One afternoon, as I was tending to the flowers that Tom and I had planted together, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Liz's number, a name I hadn't seen on my screen for months. Hesitantly, I answered. "Linda, it's Liz. Listen, we need your help," she blurted out, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. I took a deep breath, bracing myself. "What's wrong?" "It's David. He's in trouble, big trouble. He's being charged with fraud. We need money for a good lawyer." Her voice was desperate, but I detected an underlying expectation, as if my agreement was a foregone conclusion. The news hit me hard, not because of the charges, somehow, I wasn't surprised, but because they had the audacity to ask for my help after everything. "Liz, I can't. David needs to take responsibility for his actions. I won't bail him out." There was a pause on the line, and then Liz's voice turned cold, venomous. "I should have known. He was right about you, always so stupid and narrow-minded. You never cared about us, only about yourself." Her words stung, but my resolve didn't waver. "Liz, that's enough. I've done all I can for you too. It's time for David to face the consequences of his actions." Without waiting for her response, I ended the call, my hand shaking slightly as I placed the phone back on the table. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the weight of 1,000 unspoken words and what-ifs. Tom found me on the porch later, the sunset casting long shadows over the yard. He sat beside me, his presence a comforting warmth. "Everything all right?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I sighed, leaning into him. "It's David. He's in trouble again." But this time I made the decision not to help. "It's hard, Tom, but I know it's the right thing to do." Tom wrapped an arm around me, pulling me closer. "You're a strong woman, Linda. Stronger than you give yourself credit for. You've done all you can. It's up to David now." As we sat there, watching the day give way to night, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The heartaches, the betrayals, but also the love, the growth, and the understanding that sometimes, the hardest decisions are the ones that ultimately save us. Liz's call, David's troubles, they were just echoes of a past that no longer had the power to hurt me. I had found my peace, my strength, and my family. And I was determined to protect that, no matter what came our way. "Always be true to yourself," I murmured, more to myself than to Tom. "Even when it's hard." Especially when it's your own son. Tom squeezed my hand in silent agreement, and in that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, I would face it with courage and integrity. I had learned to stand my ground, to choose my happiness and well-being, and to let go of those who couldn't respect that.